Yeah. John, how are you? Good.
Hey, Helen.
Put it all in one, which is smart. I think these are new. Look at this.
Okay, well, we have a couple of more people signing in, but there's a little routine work to do at the beginning. I would like to call to order the Development Review Commission meeting of December 16, 2024, and ask Steph Kluge to call the roll, please.
Chair Sangri,
Here?
Vice Chair O'Connor,
Here.
Dews,
Here.
Bates,
Here.
Leek,
Here?
Mino,
Here.
Lindstrom,
Here.
All set, everybody's here. We have an agenda in front of you. Does anyone on any of the commissioners have changes to the agenda? Okay, we'll move ahead. I think we will not have a report from City Council for this meeting, but we did have distributed minutes of our previous meeting, October 7, 2024. Does anyone have comments about those minutes? Any revisions you'd like to make? Hearing none, I'll move the acceptance of the minutes of October 7, 2024.
I second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Do you need to call the roll on this? No. Yep. Okay. We have an important public hearing tonight is a little bit unusual in that we have consolidated two separate cases that are obviously very much addressing the same kinds of issues. I'd like to speak both to the audience and also to the commissioners. We have a significant number of comments that have come in and a detailed report from staff. I think you can assume that the commissioners have read all of that. And particularly, at least I noticed going through many of the comments, the written comments that have been made are similar. There are, in my view, at least a handful of very important issues that many people have commented about. And when one of those issues comes up, I hope that we will spend enough time to really deliberate carefully, hear your comments about it, and hopefully if we have exhausted the discussion or the input from you on a particular issue, we won't have to come back into it. On the other hand, everybody has their 5 minutes and we want to honor that. So with that, I'd like to ask Attorney Boone to give us the rules, please, and the procedures.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As mentioned, this is a consolidated case, and so somewhat unusual. We ask that you direct your testimony to, if you have a group of trees, please identify the group you're talking about. If it's a single tree, the commission ultimately needs to make a decision based upon each tree. So it would be helpful to direct your attention to a particular tree if you're talking about that. If you're talking about all the trees, because they share similar characteristics, then please note that in your testimony as well. This being a consolidated case, the commission will, you can take testimony about both of the cases. The commission will deliberate upon the two applications separately. Okay? All right. The public hearing process will be will begin as, let me begin with the discussion about the matter. All right, this is regarding AP 2404, which is a request for approval of a type 2 tree removal application, 499-24-1007, for 22 trees, 6 inches to 44 inches DBH, to construct a new 8-unit cottage cluster middle housing development located at 233 East Avenue, tax reference 21E3DA 4200, and AP 2405, which is a request for removal of a type 2 tree removal application, 499-24-1844, to remove one 18-inch DBH western hemlock to construct a required public improvement as part of the new 8-unit cottage cluster middle housing development. That is same address, of course, and same tax lot. Staff coordinator is Courtney Sims, associate planner. The public hearing process will be as follows. First, a presentation by staff, then testimony by the applicant up to 20 minutes, then testimony by parties in support of the application, followed by testimony by parties opposed to the application, and finally, testimony by those neither for nor against the application. Individuals will be allowed up to 5 minutes. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person, except to the applicant, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, homeowner associations, government or government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. These time limits do not include time spent responding to questions from the commission. Testimony by attorneys, representatives, and witnesses on behalf of or which are part of the presentation by a person shall be counted within that person's time limit. It is assumed that persons are testifying on their own behalf unless they expressly identify the recognized neighborhood association, homeowner association, government or government agency, or other incorporated public interest organization that you're representing. After testimony in favor, opposed, and either for nor against, then the applicant's rebuttal, up to 5 minutes, and then commission deliberation, including a statement to the applicant by the commission of any proposed conditions of approval that might be different than contained in the staff report, and the applicant's response to the commission's conditions of approval proposed following commission deliberation. Let me indicate, unfortunately, tonight our little timer lights are not working. Therefore, when we get down to, if you have 5 minutes, well, either 5 minutes or it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes. 1 minute before the expiration of your time, I will raise my hand. And then when your time is up, I'll raise both hands, and you might hear this thing that was supposed to beep as well. And then it's up to the chair to manage it from there. As stated in public notice, the deadline for submission of any written materials was noon today. No written materials may be submitted to commission tonight. The tree removal request is to be based upon the applicable criteria and standards. The staff report lists the criteria that staff identified as applicable to the request. It was available online and from the planning department. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable criteria. We ask that you specifically identify to the commission the criteria or standards you are addressing, so the commission may consider your testimony in relation to those criteria or standards. If you do not identify the criteria or standards you are addressing, the commission is not obliged to guess which standards or criteria you're testifying about and may not consider your testimony in its decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes raising the issue to the City Council and on appeal. The failure of the applicant to raise any constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with specificity to allow the commission to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. We now advise the DRC that a potential conflict of interest is declared on behalf of each of the DRC members to the extent of the business or employment, which each will identify. Unless declared otherwise, the respective DRC member does not have a known present or anticipated future business relationship with the project or the applicant. It's possible that a future business relationship could arise the initiation, design, construction, or maintenance of the project through either the employment or business of the DRC member personally, or through relatives defined in ORS 244-020. So I'd ask the commission members to please declare if you've had an ex parte contact, including a site visit, any bias on the application, financial conflicts of interest, and please state your business or employment. Commissioner Mino.
My name's Yuko Mino. I'm an architect. I do know of the site, but have not visited it in particular to this case. And I do not know the parties involved, nor have I had any ex parte communication. I do not have any financial interest or conflict of interest in this case. I do not have a bias.
My name is Helen Leek. I'm a realtor here in Lake Oswego. I know where the site is. I haven't specifically visited it. I have had no ex parte communication, and I do not know the parties involved. I have no financial or conflict of interest, and I have no bias.
My name is John Dews. I'm a retired architect, and I am familiar with the site, but I have not made a formal visit as a part of this application. I've had no ex parte contacts, nor do I have any bias or conflict of interests.
I'm Dwight Sangre. I'm a retired civil engineer. I am familiar with the site. I have not made a formal site visit. I am not involved in a financial, professional, or any other way with any of the parties involved in this situation. I have had no ex parte discussions, and I don't consider that I have any bias regarding this project.
My name is Russ O'Connor. I'm a retired project manager. I've had no ex parte contact. I'm aware of the site. I have no bias, financial, conflict. No conflict of interest. Sorry.
My name is Larry Lindstrom. I'm a construction executive. I have not visited the site, but I do know the location. I've had no ex parte communications. I do not know the parties involved. I do not have a financial interest or a conflict of interest in this case, and I do not have a bias.
My name is Kristen Bates. I'm an attorney. I have not had any ex parte communications. I'm familiar with the site generally, but I have no conflict or no bias, and I have no financial interests.
Thank you. Is there any person who wishes to challenge the commissioner's right to consider an application? Seeing none, Associate Planner Courtney Sims with the staff report, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Courtney Sims, Associate Planner for the City and Staff Coordinator for these tree applications. Before I begin my presentation, I'd like to introduce Exhibit G517, 518, and G519 for AP 2404, Tree Application 499-24-001007-tree. And for AP 24-05, I'd like to add into the record G11. These were received before the noon deadline today and are in opposition of the tree removal applications. The issues raised in the comments are similar to issues in prior comments that were addressed in the staff report. Bit of background, the Type 2 tree removal applications are both for the site at 233 E Avenue, located in the R6 zone in the First Edition Forest Hills neighborhood. The site was previously developed with one single-family dwelling, which has since been demolished. And the site is under review for a middle housing cottage cluster development for 8 cottages. Middle housing is allowed outright and is reviewed for compliance through the building permit process. It's not subject to notice or appeal. Cottage cluster development has 5 to 8 cottages by definition and requires quite a few site improvements, including contiguous courtyard, 4-foot wide pathways connecting each cottage to the courtyard and street, and individual water lines, sewer infrastructure, stormwater management, and any associated public improvements. For residential development, associated public improvements are determined by the city engineer. For this site, that includes grading and graveling the previously unopened alleyway to a width of 20 feet. Similar to other Chapter 50 standards for residential development, street improvement mitigation must be clear and objective. If they want to, only the applicant may apply for a reduction through the minor development process, but it is their choice. All of the building permits have been reviewed by planning, building, engineering, and fire, and found to meet all applicable criteria. The public improvement permit has also been received and reviewed. There are 2 Type 2 tree removal applications under review, one for the tree removal associated with building permits, showed in red, and one for the public improvements that's shown in blue. It's the little guy down there. I'll use this color scheme throughout the presentation to differentiate between the 2 applications. As part of the site improvements for the building permits, 22 trees are proposed for removal, either for development, landscaping, or both. The 22 trees under this application include 13 trees between 6 and 15 inches in diameter, 3 trees that are more than 30 inches in diameter, and 6 trees that are between 15 and 30 inches. All the 3 trees that are larger than 30 inches in diameter are in poor health or have poor structure. The trees species for the building permit application are walnut, flowering plum, European chestnut, and there is 1 native Pacific dogwood. As part of the alleyway graveling, 1 tree is proposed for removal, an 18-inch western hemlock. There are other non-Type 2 permits that have already been issued for this site, including invasive, dead, hazardous, and Type 1, which are shown on some of the site plans in black. So these have already been issued and are not part of this review. Per the tree code, the city must approve a Type 2 application that complies with Type 2 criteria, LOC 55.02.080. Moving on to the criteria. Criterion 1 for Type 2 tree removal is that there must be a reason for removal. It can be that it has outgrown its landscape area as part of a development application or as part of a landscape improvement. Starting with tree removal associated with the building permits, the applicant is requesting removal to construct a middle housing cottage cluster, which includes the 8 cottages, the utilities, the stormwater management, and the pathways connecting each cottage to the courtyard and street. 20 of those trees are proposed as part of the development, shown in orange circles here. They're located either too close to or within the footprint of the proposed construction areas. They would not be able to be retained. Removal of these trees is for development. 6 trees are proposed for removal with landscaping improvements, shown in green shading here, as these trees are in poor condition with poor structure. I'll note that 4 trees meet both reasons, so you'll see orange circles and green shading on those associated trees. Here are the photos of the trees proposed for landscaping improvement due to poor condition and structure and ice damage causing a heavy lean. Criterion 1 is met for the tree removal associated with the building permit application. Criterion 1 for the public improvement tree removal is due to development. As the tree is within the required grading and graveling area for the alleyway, it would not be able to be retained. Criterion 1 is met for the tree removal for the public improvement application. Criterion 2 addresses impacts of erosion control, flow of surface waters, and protection of adjacent trees. Based on evidence provided in the application by the applicant's arborist, confirmed in site visits by the city's contract arborist and city staff, the requested tree removal will not result in significant negative impacts on erosion control, flow of surface waters, or protection of adjacent trees or existing windbreaks. Additionally, the development of both the alleyway and the site requires addressing erosion control and stormwater management, which includes removal of these trees. Criterion 2 is met for both applications. Criterion 3 addresses tree removal impacts on the character or aesthetic of the neighborhood. This standard is met if the removal of the tree does not involve a significant tree, as defined by the tree code, alterations to distinctive features or continuity of the neighborhood skyline, trees serving as a visual screen between different abutting zones, street tree, or greater than 50% of a stand of trees. I'll go through each subcriterion on its own in the next few slides. A significant tree is defined per Lake Oswego Tree Code as a healthy, non-invasive tree over 15 inches in diameter that is significant due to size, species, or distinctive character, or is the only remaining tree on the property. Of the trees in both applications, 7 meet the first 3 elements: healthy, non-invasive, and larger than 15 inches in diameter. The red and blue X's are those trees. These trees are then further looked at for significance due to size, species, or distinctive character. From the 7 trees that meet the first elements of significance, we look at each tree to see if it is individually significant due to size, species, or distinctive character. For size, based on the site visit and comparing the trees to the neighborhood tree size, the city's contract arborist described the trees as average or smaller size relative to other trees in the neighborhood, except for the 18-inch western hemlock associated with the public improvements shown here in blue. For species, the trees are all species that are described by the project arborist and the city's contract arborist as not unique to the neighborhood. And for distinctive character, being of average size to the neighborhood and not a unique species or prominent location, staff finds that none of the trees individually or as a stand provide distinctive character to the neighborhood. Concluding subcriterion 3A, staff finds that the tree permit associated with the building permits, none of the trees are significant, and subcriterion 3A is met. For the tree removal associated with the public improvements, subcriterion 3A is not met, as the hemlock is significant due to size. Additionally, should both tree permit applications be approved, this tree would be the last tree on the property, which deems it significant. An exceptions analysis to criterion 3 is required, which we'll revisit at the end of all of these subcriteria. Subcriterion 3B requires that the applicant show that the removal will not have a negative impact on the streetscape, will not have a significant negative impact on distinctive features or continuity of the skyline. As shown in the red circles on this and the next slide, both the applicant, city staff, city's contract arborist, and comments from the public have stated that removal of the trees will alter the continuity of the skyline as viewed from the street. The photos of the skyline also show that. Subcriterion 3B is not met for both applications, so an exceptions analysis for criterion 3 is required under this subcriterion. Subcriterion 3C applies to trees that serve as a visual screen between abutting dissimilar zones. As the site is surrounded by public right-of-way, there is no abutting site by definition. Abut does not include sites that are separated by public right-of-way. Subcriterion 3C is met for both applications. Subcriterion 3D applies to street trees, which are trees in the public right-of-way. As shown in the site survey marked in red, 9 trees for the building permit application were identified as street trees. Subcriterion 3D is not met for these trees on the building permit associated with the tree application. So again, an exceptions analysis to criterion 3 is required. Subcriterion 3E applies to the removal of 50% or more of a stand, which is a group of trees with at least 120 feet of contiguous crown. Based on an aerial review of the site, the proposed removal appears to remove all of the stand of trees. Subcriterion 3E is not met for all the trees in the building permit application, but is met for the public improvement tree removal application for 1 tree. If criterion 3 is not met, if criterion 3 is not met, an exceptions analysis is required. Criterion 3 exception B requires that alternatives to tree removal are considered and no reasonable alternative exists to allow the property to be used as permitted in the zone. For the 6 landscaping trees in the building permit tree application, the city has historically found that when trees have poor condition or structure, there is no reasonable alternative to landscaping improvement. Thus, these 6 trees meet the exceptions analysis for criterion 3. For the tree removal associated with development, the city may consider alternative site plans or placement of structure. However, in looking at these alternatives, the city cannot consider a site plan that requires a variance or a more discretionary application, one that reduces density or requires smaller homes than what would be allowed in the zone, or an alternative that does not meet all applicable criteria for development. The 22 trees proposed for removal are not in great condition and are less likely to tolerate stress due to how unmaintained the site has been. And there are quite a few requirements for cottage cluster development, so reasonable alternatives are not really feasible. Alternatives would need to meet dimensional standards, cottage cluster use specific standards, general and R6 building design standards, and utility requirements, including a private sewer main to all the cottages, and individual water lines and on-site stormwater management. This significantly restrains possible alternatives. I'm happy to go deeper into any of those requirements if you'd like. No reasonable alternatives were identified in the public comments for the building permits. Staff reviewed alternatives to removal, especially the removal of the larger trees near the north of the site, and did not find alternatives that meet the applicable standards that would not require removal of at least one of the dwellings. Again, the city cannot require that the applicant develop at a lower density or build smaller dwellings than what would be allowed for the zone or require a variance as a reasonable alternative to tree removal. Given this, staff finds that there are no reasonable alternatives. With the exception criteria met for all trees, the criterion 3 for the building permit tree removal application is met. Okay. In removing possible reasonable alternatives for the public improvement tree permit, the grading and graveling of the alleyway will go right up to the hemlock's root zone, which significantly impacts the stability of the tree roots. 20 feet of graveling for alleyway improvements are required by the city engineering department based on the function of the alley. The only way to reduce the residential street requirements per LOC 50.06.008.7 is by the applicant submitting a minor development application for a public improvement reduction. This may only be requested by the applicant and is a more discretionary minor development process. Similar to how we are unable to require variance as a reasonable alternative, the city cannot require that the applicant apply for a more discretionary application as a reasonable alternative to tree removal. Staff finds there are no reasonable alternatives to removal for the 18-inch western hemlock. With exceptions criteria met, criterion 3 is met for the public improvement tree removal permit. Criterion 4 requires that the removal is not for view enhancement. As tree removal, as tree removal is proposed for development for both applications, this criterion is met. Criterion 5 requires that tree removal is not contrary to another section of the Lake Oswego Code. There are no overlays that prohibit tree removal on this site, and it is not in Oswego Lake. This criterion is met for both applications. Criterion 6 requires that each tree removed is mitigated, and native trees are mitigated with a tree on the city's native tree list. One native tree is proposed for removal and will be mitigated with a native tree. The other type 2 trees for the building permit tree removal application will be mitigated with 21 Persian ironwood trees. Additionally, to meet the street tree requirements for the building permit application, the applicant is planting 14 columnar golden rain, meaning a total of 36 trees are proposed for planting. For mitigation for the hemlock trees removal, as the site will already have 36 trees proposed for planting, staff finds that payment into the tree fund for the removal of one significant tree is acceptable. This criterion is met. In conclusion, staff finds that the applicant has shown that all applicable criteria for 55.02.080 have been met for both applications, and staff recommends approval with the condition that all mitigation trees must be planted and inspected prior to final building inspection for any of the dwellings, and payment into the tree fund for the equivalent of 2 mitigation trees is made. Thank you. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and we also have Stefan Broadus from the engineering department if there are questions about the public improvements.
Thank you very much. We have an opportunity to ask questions, and I'm going to take the first question. Leonard Sims, the zoning that permits this kind of development, could you summarize the clarity of that zoning? There is no question in your report that this is zoned for this kind of development. Is that correct?
Yeah, so middle housing, which includes duplex, triplex, quadplex, and cottage cluster development, is allowed in all residential zones. It was adopted as part of the HB 2001 Middle Housing Code.
Any other questions? Well, I have another one.
Okay.
The criteria that are applied for the graveled alleyway, are these criteria that clearly are required, and that, as you said, there's been no request from the developer for exception? Is that the case? There's no way that we can put that alleyway in place as an alternative that might save this tree?
Yeah, we have Stefan here. You might want to use my microphone. Yours might be a little temperamental.
Maybe you could identify yourself.
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Stefan Broadus. I'm the Director of Special Projects for the City of Lake Oswego, filling in for City Engineer Rooney, who is out of the office.
Thank you.
So the question is there a way to reduce the width of that gravel alleyway? That width in code is prescribed as found to be justified by the city engineer. 20 feet is really the bare minimum to allow for circulation through there, both in two-directional traffic as well as emergency response. Anything less than that is really substandard. So for the sake of this, it was engineering department's position that 20 foot was the minimum width required for the alley.
Thank you.
I have a question for you before you leave. Since there is no designated parking on site for any of the units, no parking will be allowed in the alleyway, is that correct?
Parking, the width of the road, the width of the alleyway is 20 feet. Parking is, for on-street parking, is described as 6 feet from the assumed center line, leaving that much 6-foot space in between where the car would be parked. So there would not be sufficient space for a car to park on street completely within the alleyway.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one. I know that the cottages are permitted outright in this zone, but so are townhouses, quadplexes, and triplexes. Maybe this is a question for the applicant, but I'm just curious to see if they explored options of doing like townhouses instead, so that you wouldn't need as much land to, provide the sidewalks and such.
The applicant is entitled to select their residential choice. That,
And
under
it's
the
permitted, I
definition,
understand.
right, under the reasonable alternatives analysis, so long as the alternatives continue to comply with other provisions of the code, they are permitted they are permitted to use the property as permitted in the zone. The zone allows whatever they're doing, so that's their choice.
Is that it? Well, we have a number of people who have expressed interest in commenting, and I apologize that,
Let's start with the applicant first, of course.
What?
Start with the applicant first.
Yeah. Oh, the applicant, surely. Sorry, applicant, please make a presentation for us.
Check, check. Hey, there we go. My name is Zach Horton. I am the professional designer behind this project, and I'll keep this short and sweet because Courtney's description of the project and everything leading up to this point was extremely thorough. We have designed a lot of cottages, but not many in Lake Oswego. And this project, when we first approached it, like anyone, when a builder brings us a piece of dirt, says, what can I do with it? And we were very familiar with cottages in other cities that looked at cottages in Lake Oswego and said, what can we do with it? And basically what you're looking at with this development is 8 units as big as they possibly could be within the code of separations, setbacks, and the required common space that comes with cottages. We did look at quadplexes, but one of the big drawbacks of that is that cottage clusters are, I believe, between 5 and 8 units, where a quadplex is quite literally 4 units on that site, where you can't put, like, say, 2 quadplexes on a single parcel without going through extensive land use and further dividing it and such. And we looked at many different layouts of this. We looked at many different options that had less units. But from the builder's perspective, it was just not profitable for anything less than 8 units. And then when you take that, when you take this layout that gave you the most optimal units for the market, we looked at the trees that were next to them, and some of these quite literally sat on the trees, so those trees had to go. And then the ones near the landscaping, it was a determination from our arborist to say those just aren't going to survive the development that close to it. We had initially preserved the tree that was near the public improvements, but once we determined that public improvements were required, that alleyway comes literally right up to the trunk of that tree. And we asked our arborist, is there anything that we can do to preserve that? Is there any other way that we could potentially develop this? We had our civil engineer and our arborist get together on that. And it was just infeasible to save that tree with what the city was requiring, the city engineers were requiring. That is most of my spiel. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Well, now, thank you very much. You'll be here to answer any questions that come up in the public presentation, of course. I have a list, as I was about to say before. I'm going to apologize. I don't really have clarity on the names of everyone that has signed up. Our best interpretation, and I will often be using first names, but if, when I call your name, if it's close enough that you think it's you, would you please come up and identify yourself? Also, general comments from the public are limited to 5 minutes. If you are representing the homeowners or the neighborhood association or other groups that have a 10-minute opportunity, please identify yourself. And I'm going to
And
start.
I guess I would add to that, if somebody is ceding time, we'll need to know who's ceding time to whom. Okay.
That's
But you would call the name first, and then they would indicate their ceding time.
all right. I'm going to call Brenna. There we go.
It's interesting that we registered Brenna under my name. She ceded her time to me, Eric. I don't, we registered.
Yeah, that's fine. And again, please identify
So
yourself.
is she present? The person ceding time is who, and,
Eric, Brenna is ceding time to myself.
thank you.
I don't know that I need to turn a mic on, do I?
Yes,
Which one?
I think you should.
Ah, right then. Thank you all for your time tonight, committee. Tonight I'm sharing with you a perspective.
Again, your name is?
My name's Eric. As a fellow real estate investor and a neighbor, the points I would like to make to the committee are as follows. One, the community, we insist that every box has been checked on the permit review. While you've demonstrated that, we see an overall negative impact to this project in our neighborhood. The committee should not rubber stamp applications from developers, especially this one that is setting a stage for cottage cluster developments in Lake Oswego. This permit matters more than any permit application that has come to this committee. If you say yes to clear cutting a 1/4 acre lot for high density housing, you are no longer the stewards of Tree City, USA. The second point, high density is defined as 20 housing acres per acre. So by simple math, this 1/4 acre with more than 5 houses is also high density. It is not middle housing. As a real estate developer myself, I noticed the committee claimed there was no reasonable alternative. So I am here to provide several reasonable alternatives to the committee, asking that the developer adjust their high-density housing to accommodate for more appropriate middle housing solutions that also protect the trees of our neighborhood and the character that we come to expect in First Edition. You can have both. Middle housing, as has been discussed, is defined as duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, townhomes, and clusters. To demonstrate good neighbor solutions, I'm sharing a variety. Well, I should ask, you said there's no written materials able to be shared, but if permissible, I've got some just drawings with overlaid quadplex, triplex, and duplex. I could circulate them if permissible.
To clarify, no written materials, not even handouts for your presentation can be submitted.
Copy, understood.
Thank you.
Yep. I would propose that the tree committee take a stand to protect the environment. My 3 children are counting on it. The third point I'd like to make, it's becoming clear in looking at the past 8 years of outcomes for tree permits that developers like myself have their hands very deep into the pockets of the city council and this committee. When a property is scraped, property tax revenue rises, and the city makes more money, as do the developers. That will still happen here, so why not protect our trees? environment, and the character of our community. If a permit like this is left to stand, then why does the committee even exist? You don't protect our tree city or the distinctive features of our neighborhood skyline. You don't preserve visual screens. You are removing street trees, and when there are no significant impacts, you're not denying permits. This is your chance to reconsider a permit that is unreasonable and that our community clearly has issues with. The developer needs to come up with a better plan and a reasonable tree plan that preserves our community. We are desperately counting on you to be a shining bright light on this issue so that all our community knows what is happening on permit hearings like this.
Yes.
I have to take umbrage with your statement, the deep pockets of the city and this committee. We are all volunteers here. And I would also remind you that we are just interpreting and enforcing an existing tree code, which I hope that you are up to speed on.
Fair.
And I would also
Apologies.
say that if you have issues with density and middle housing, look to Salem, not to Lake Oswego.
That's fair. Middle housing, as it's defined here, as I defined, it's clear they're maximizing it.
Absolutely.
Right.
But that is what Salem wants. And not only are they maximizing it, Salem has also said a developer does not have to have on-street, off-street parking. So these units will all be parking on the street. And again, that is Salem. So if you have issues, remember who you elect next time.
How does Salem have to do with this permit? I'm sorry.
It's not the permit,
respectfully.
it's their rules. If you are within a quarter mile of a transit main, I was on the planning commission when we did all the time,
Sure.
place, and manner for cottage clusters and middle housing. And overlaid on top of that is a transportation plan that says you don't have to have off-street parking if you are within a quarter of a mile of a main transit line, which I guess is State Street or A Avenue. I'm not quite sure which criteria in this particular application applies there. So Lake Oswego is just following the law, and the Salem and the state wants density. They won't increase the urban growth boundaries. So if you don't like what you're seeing here, it's not because we instigated it. It's because we are complying with laws that have been overlaid on us. And they may be onerous and you may not like them. I hear your pain about the tree thing.
My sincere apologies if the statement about the committee and the pockets was taken personally. I'm just reflecting the 8 years of
was.
approvals.
It has
And-
nothing to do with pockets. It has to
Correct.
do
All
with
right.
interpreting the tree code of Lake Oswego, and it has nothing to do with the air quality or in the environment or your children's future because there are trees or there are not trees. It has to do with laws that were put in place in Lake Oswego, and if you don't like them, then stand up and try to get them modified or mitigated. I would also tell you that those trees, if you go down the list, there's fair, couple good, poor. If you want future developments not to cut the trees down, take care of the trees that are on the properties in your neighborhoods. No one took care of any of these trees. Those flowering plums are just disastrous. And the ones that they're going to mitigate with, the Persian ironwood, we have them in our neighborhood because we had invasive species trees. And they came down and the city planted Persian ironwoods. They're lovely. They're columnar. They grow fast. They're beautiful fall color. In 10 years, you will be pleased that these are on this property as opposed to the very unsightly ones that are there now.
I see. I'll become an activist in the law, and I will state that while this hearing is strictly on trees, there have been many other effects or consequences that will result. You mentioned parking, ingress, egress are also going to become issues. This is one lever that the public has. I thank you all for hearing.
Good, thank you. And again, as you've stated, we are applying the tree code. That's all this is about. Okay, thank you very much. Gail is the next name I have here.
Really quickly, for people testifying, if you could state your full name and beneficially, if you could also give us your address, that helps us track in the findings. Thank you.
No.
These aren't working like last time? Okay, there we go. Hello, my name is Gail Van Leeman, and I live across the street from the proposed cottage cluster developments. I live at 790 3rd Street. Before I begin with what I prepared to say, I do want to speak in defense of Florence, who lived at that corner lot for all the years that I was living there. She lived there by herself until she was 90 years old, and she regularly had people come out and take care of the trees to the best of her ability on the budget that she had. So I think Florence needs to be spoken for, and she loved that her property looked like it was part of Tryon. So the lot in question here today, of course, is 255 E Avenue, where there are currently over 30 trees that are proposed to be taken down. So we were informed that it was going to be clear cut, and so I'm here to argue for preserving at least some of the existing trees. And again, I have to modify what I originally planned to say based on what we've been talking about, that you have no options, you needed to build absolutely as big and profitable as possible. But the majority, or at least 6 or 8 of those trees are on the periphery in city, on city property. And if you visit the property, which I do all the time, many of those trees are savable. So what we're going to be replacing them with, again, is going to take us at least 10, 20 or more years to develop into anything that would be of benefit to, for example, the environment. We know that the trees play a critical role in managing stormwater, improving air quality, and reducing the urban heat effect. Cutting down all the trees on this large lot removes natural drainage systems, which we are having a big issue with in our neighborhood, by the way, which increases the risk of flooding and soil erosion throughout our rainy season. Trees also absorb the pollutants and carbon dioxide, where of course releasing oxygen and making the air cleaner and healthier for the current and future residents. During our dry summers, trees naturally cool the environment by providing the shade, which these young trees will not, especially with the addition of the more impervious surfaces like the roofs, roads, and the additional cars that will be parked on our streets surrounding these 2 highly impacted corners, because there, of course, is another cottage cluster going up directly across from this, which hasn't been discussed. And of course, noise. Trees act as natural sound barriers, helping to mitigate some of the noise pollution which will be needed in this area after it is densely developed. I want to bring up the fact that there is a tree on the corner of E Avenue and 4th. It's a hemlock that several years ago, several of my neighbors and I fought to preserve and save. It was going to be cut down, and it wasn't. And so there is a beautiful hemlock that was preserved there, and we are thankful for it every day. The other thing we're concerned about, of course, is property values. Studies consistently show that homes surrounded by trees and green spaces have higher property values than those in areas devoid of greenery. So all of this is attractive to prospective buyers and to the long-term value of the community. I've had several people ask me if I'm worried about my property value given these dramatic changes, and the answer, of course, is yes, I am. I'm also concerned about the wildlife habitat that hasn't been brought up at all. Trees are home to local wildlife such as birds, squirrels, and pollinators, which are essential for maintaining the balanced ecosystem. On my 1 minute, okay. So again, I want to bring up one more point, and that is the community impact. Maintaining some of the existing mature trees demonstrates a commitment to responsible and sustainable development. Overdevelopment with no green space can and is provoking resistance from neighbors like me, concerned about overcrowding, loss of greenery, and changes to the quality of life. Throughout the thoughtful preservation of trees can ease this tension and foster goodwill at a time when the cities of Oregon are being forced to comply with the state's housing mandates, which we are all aware. So all I'm asking is, if it's possible, can we just save a few and have a couple of mature trees? Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, SH, which I think might be Mr. Hauser. Miss Hauser, sorry.
You guys don't need to turn the microphone off when you're done. You can just leave it on for the next person. It takes a few seconds for it to.
Is this where, oh, there it is, okay. Hi, my name is Stacy Hauser. I'm a resident of First Edition. My home is in close proximity to both the 233 E Avenue and the lot across the street at 310 G Avenue. I did want to stick up for Florence as well. I lived very close to where she lived. She was extremely elderly, and we all kind of pitched in to help make sure those trees stayed as healthy as possible. She did the best she could, and I know she was very proud of that lot, as well as how natural she kept it, free of pesticides, et cetera. So I know she was very proud of that, and I do want to make sure I stick up for her.
Flowering plums are just tough to keep in good condition.
Okay.
They're tough trees.
Yep, gotcha, thank you. I do oppose the permit request for the following 5 reasons. Number 1, Lake Oswego is known to attract new residents due in part to our mature, established trees. They help keep property tax values high and distinguish our town from others. Clear cutting the tree canopy at 233 Avenue will significantly change the neighborhood's visual charm. Number 2, demolishing the area's existing root system could also cause destructive water drainage and soil erosion issues. E Avenue is a steeply sloped road down. Water drainage and soil erosion are already a problem, a significant problem on that lot. Combined, these issues could be a significant problem for homes in the entire neighborhood. I've previously voiced water drainage concerns to the city of Lake Oswego, and they've gone, from what I can tell, unaddressed. I could be wrong, but soil erosion are already a problem. I don't believe City Council has adequately planned for this as an issue. Number 3, there are multiple healthy trees on 233 Avenue that we could save. I've personally counted between 12 and 15 significantly sized, visually healthy trees. And one large bush that would provide the visual charm, root system, and barrier that we are looking for. We might need to reduce the number of planned houses on that site, but salvaging this lot's existing landscape could help us accomplish these goals. Point number 4, the trees planned for that lot are apparently known to be invasive. This is what I hear, cause significant droppings and have a reputation for creating a mess on the street. We currently don't have a city-wide way to keep this clean. Occasional street sweepers won't do the trick. City Council could ask for bigger, non-invasive and character-friendly trees potentially to be built instead. Point number 5. Additional landscaping is needed to act as a barrier between G Avenue and E Avenue. With Florence's home demolished, I can already see clean through from E Avenue to G Avenue. Keeping that barrier in place or creating a new non-invasive and charming barrier could help keep the new sites in line with Lake Oswego's charm and character. The current plans currently do not do this. Please reconsider approving this permit.
I have a question. Which specific trees on 3rd, which numbers specifically, and which part of the tree code are you specifically referring to in your testimony?
I'm sorry, what part of the testimony references tree code?
You mentioned that there were trees on, I think, 3rd Avenue that you have walked and could be saved. Could you identify specifically on the site plan which ones those are?
I did not bring that back up with me, but I did go through and actually create my own handwritten map that shows what I consider to be visually healthy trees that I believe to be saved. That could be different than an arborist's view. That's my opinion. It's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much, Stacy.
Sorry.
Thank you for leaving the mic turned on, though. Thank you. Dolores is the next name that I have. You're going to cede your time to whom? To Debbie. Okay. And Debbie, you are next.
I am next.
Please state your name.
I will. Good evening. My name is Deborah Link. I'm an environmental and civil engineer from Stanford and a resident of First Edition. My neighbors and I are here tonight to appeal the 2 tree removal permits for the cottage cluster proposed at 233 E Avenue. We all agree in our neighborhood that First Edition is a gem of a neighborhood. New neighbors and newcomers are attracted to the tree-lined streets, the small town feel, the walkability, as well as the excellent school and community facilities. My goal and my neighbor is to have this cottage cluster be a stellar example and a welcome addition to the neighborhood. The American Heritage Dictionary defines a cottage as a small single-storied house. These homes are not the lovely cottages that were shown in the plan for middle housing that people were looking at when the planning was done for the code, but they're 1,100, 1,400 square foot, 3-story homes, 8 of them on a single quarter-acre lot. We believe it's important that new developments consider the character of the neighborhood and mitigate the visual and emotional impacts from scraping all 23 trees from this lot. I want to stress this. This particular development is going to set the tone for how cottage developments are planned and built throughout our city. I would like you to think about how you would feel if the treed lot next door to you across the street was scraped off, laid bare, somebody built 8 homes on it, and you waited 10 to 20 to 30 years for everything to recover. To directly address the overall criteria form from the tree removal application in the staff report, we respond, 1, does the proposed tree removal involve a significant tree as defined in the code? We believe the stand of chestnut trees is unique in that we are unaware of any other stands in First Edition. While they have no brass plate designation, these trees provide considerable habitat for wildlife and serve as a shade canopy for the area. While the trees are not named heritage trees, they still create the texture and feel of our neighborhood. 2, does the removal make alterations to the distinctive features or continuity of the neighborhood skyline as viewed from all public streets and properties within 300 feet of the property? Yes, we agree with the developer. The property is a forested retreat in the neighborhood. The proposals would clear-cut the entire quarter-acre lot, causing a visual scar in the continuity of the otherwise tree-lined streets lasting for decades. Not years, decades. This scar will be viewable from every surrounding street and homes over several blocks. 3, does the tree permit remove a tree that serves as a visual screen between a residential zone and an abutting non-residential zone, or between a low-density residential zone and a medium or high-density residential zone? And the developer has said no, but we believe the answer to this should be a resounding yes. The proposal will remove all screening between a single-family, treed, low-density zone from what will become a much higher-density residential zone. Does the fourth is does the permit remove a street tree? And the answer is yes, we agree. Multiple street trees will be removed. In fact, all trees, as you know, and we've repeated many times, will be removed from the property, leaving it barren and treeless, other than small sapling-sized replacement trees, which again will take decades. Will greater than 50% of a stand of trees be removed? Yes, 100% of them will be. Conclusion, accordingly, and we agree, removal of the trees will have a significant negative impact on the character of aesthetics of the neighborhood. Scraping this lot will have a long-term, significant area-wide negative impact on both the character and the aesthetics of the neighborhood from every direction in the area. All 6 of the criteria have negative answers in our evaluation. If this proposal is accepted without significant changes, either proposed by the developer or the commission, it leads your city neighbors to wonder what would cause the commission to give serious consideration to the criteria and request modifications to the plan or initiate discussions with the developer. My attorney from Tonkin Torp Law Offices noted that no alternatives to this proposal were explored and that our suggestions which follow are very reasonable. My neighbors and I believe that ignoring your own criteria, if this proposal is approved, will be a travesty and eyesore that does not take into context the feel of the First Edition neighborhood. Such a failure precedent would then be repeated citywide for every development. There are additional issues which we raised with the tree permit. The tentative decision indicates there are no alternatives. 8 units are not required to be built. The number is 5 to 8. And there are no alternatives because they're jamming 8 houses into a quarter-acre lot, leaving no room for thoughtful alternatives. We're placing what would be an entire subdivision in many places on one tiny lot. The plat shows that each of these homes has a tiny portion of the common courtyard, mostly the code-required side lots ceded to them, which means the required common courtyard consists of tiny chopped-up strips assigned to each unit. Basically a non-existent courtyard, which is a violation of the intent and the spirit of the requirements. Second, there's a declaration that most of the trees are either in poor or fair condition. The trees in fair condition need pruning and shaping, but some could certainly be saved, particularly on where the Unit A is on this diagram. My arborist agrees with this, and he's a long-standing resident of Lake Oswego, that the trees on the north side of the development and the tree on the southeast corner are in decent shape. Third, the lack of any enforceable commitment to provide care for the replacements of on-property or street trees means replacement trees could be planted and wither within a year or 2. Fourth, no screening is proposed to mitigate the severe adverse visual impact. The developer is proposing to replace 23 type 2 trees with 1.5-inch saplings of 2 non-native species. My neighbors have additional comments and concerns, and I really appreciate their coming out and speaking to you all as well as myself. But I'm going to request the following. In order to fully understand the impact of this development on our oldest and most beloved neighborhood, I ask you to visit the site before you act on these tree permits, particularly in view of the additional one that's going to occur. Based on the severe negative visual impacts to the neighborhood from the tree removal, I ask that the proposal be returned to the planning department prior to approval to initiate discussions to identify alternative layouts with fewer homes which retain more of the screening and shade trees and provide for a proper shaded common courtyard. My arborist suggested that many of the trees and shrubs on the corner of 3rd and G could be saved if Unit A was removed from the development, and that the large tree on the southeast corner could be saved if the alley were narrowed and the closest unit facing the alley might be removed. I request that larger diameter replacement trees be provided, and that a thoughtful and diverse selection of trees, including native trees, be selected in place of the slow-growing non-native trees in the proposal. I also request that approval include a requirement for maintenance of the replacement trees. With regard to the lone tree that was to remain on site in the original request, I request the developer and the commission consider narrowing the alleyway by 4 or 5 feet in order to protect the root zone and incidentally provide a recessed area for trash cans. While the code citywide calls for 20-foot alleyways, in practice, the effective width in First Edition, and I took a tape measure out, is in the 8 to 12-foot range. And garbage trucks and fire trucks and delivery trucks can get through there just fine. It's not a freeway, it's a one-way alley. This variance would make a real difference in the property and be visually consistent with the neighborhood. Finally, I would like to request that for future proposals, developers provide a rendering of their site with the replacement trees and landscaping in place as part of the application process. I think that would be very helpful to both the neighborhoods and this commission. My last point focuses on equity. The families who move here are attracted to the tree-lined streets and green surroundings. They purchase these homes to deserve to have a quality of life commensurate with the neighborhood. The lack of significant green space within the cluster, the lack of shade, the tiny trees, and no on-site parking are not equitable for these new residents. As I emphasized earlier, this premature development sets a tone for every cottage cluster in our city. Is this really the example you want as your legacy in the community? It will follow you and the developer, just as it has in the Portland area. In summary, I want to thank the staff for their work on this first-of-a-kind proposal. I also want to thank the First Edition Neighborhood Association for their diligent efforts to make First Edition a stellar place to live and who keep the long view in mind. I know the pattern of the commission is to approve the vast majority of tree removal permits. However, in this first-of-a-kind development in First Edition, I am hopeful that the commission will take a deeper dive into the situation, visit the lots involved, and consider alternatives to mitigate significant negative impact to the First Edition neighborhood. Thank you so much for your attention and the consideration of my request.
Thank you. Questions? I have a question. Ms. Link, you've obviously done a lot of work. You have gone through point by point the conclusions of staff. And as you've heard my colleague say, we have rules and codes that we must follow as closely as we can interpret them. One of the things you did not comment about was the exception analysis that precluded several of your objections, particularly under Initiative 3, A, B, C, D, E, and F. Do you have any comment about their exceptions analysis, which was the basis for their recommending approval of this?
I don't have a comment necessarily on their recommendations, but I think there is room for negotiation and some honest discussions and some thought by the developer about the places we could have some variances and some exceptions. And I think that would be healthy. I think it would be healthy for the neighborhood. I think it would be healthy for the commission. And I think it will be healthy for the future in development. I understand the developer's point of view in working toward a profitable development. We want that to succeed. We don't want an eyesore development that stands empty because it won't sell or that it won't, be moved. And with the parking situation plus the trees, I'm concerned about that. So I think there needs to be some chat. And I'm not in the position to have that chat. And I understand you have a code, but I think that this is one of those things, and it's precedent setting for a lot of neighborhoods. And people in the community are not aware of this, generally. I mean, I've talked to probably 150 people, and they all go, what? So I think it would behoove you to have, initiate some of those discussions or have, see if the developer would be willing to entertain them. Just as a good neighbor policy. I know that middle housing will occur, and it's being encouraged by the governor. I have no doubts about that.
Well, thank you very much.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Catherine. Thank you very much. Sandy? And please state your name.
Hi, my name is it working? Yeah. My name is Sandra Zerzinski. I live at 253G Avenue, which is directly across the street from this development. I don't have anything written down what I want to talk about is more probably emotional. I've lived at that house, in that house, for 35 years. That's a long time. Florence lived in that house for probably 33 years. And she adored her trees. She adored every single one of those trees. She didn't have the finances to take care of them. We all chipped in and did the best we could. But I've watched that lot for 35 years. I want you to think about that. You watch a lot for 35 years and then find out that every single tree, bush, everything is going to be taken off of it. That houses 3 times as tall as mine are going up. And you think about what my view is going to look like, and all the view of all the people around, with no trees, with houses, with cars. It is not leaving a very goodwill feeling in any of the neighbors' hearts or minds. I don't know what the answer is, but what I'm looking at up there is not the answer. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? I have William as the next one. Please state your full name.
John William Savage. My wife Carol Hepburn and I live at 804 2nd Street. I'd like to incorporate Ms. Linke's comments into my statement as if I said the same thing. So they'll be as part and parcel of my statement. You have a written comment by Carol Hepburn, my wife and I, before you. I don't want to take up time needlessly by saying what's all in that letter. We live right across the alleyway, so directly to the east of this development. I'm concerned about the disruption of daily lives of people endlessly for months and months and months with this. The 3-story nature of 8 buildings there is not required under the cottage cluster concept. You can limit it to 5 and have the same livability and increased attraction and street presence. That would be an immense improvement over what's been proposed here. The denuding of the property is ridiculous, quite frankly. And to then plant a bunch of toothpick trees around it and wait for 10 or 20 years or 30 is not a suitable alternative, in my opinion. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Really quickly, sorry for the interruption. I just want to clarify that according to the building permits, the cottages are 21 feet in height. So we were hearing 3 stories. I just wanted to put that fact into place. Thank you.
So everyone heard that comment, which was related to the height of these developments. Eric, are you the same Eric who spoke before? Yes. And did you finish your comments before? Thank you very much, Eric. And then the last I have is Emerson, who is neither for nor against. It's nice to see a shirt that's not ducks or beavers.
Yes, it is. All right. My name's Emerson Vaughn. I live close to this development, and I'd like to state that the commission can deny these permits, and also that the application did not meet your guys' criteria. That's it.
Emerson, do you have a specific example of where it did not meet the criteria?
No.
Yeah.
I guess I can just jump in here and say, the reason why everyone is so stunned about middle housing and what is allowed is because the people aren't paying attention. They're not reading the LO review. I don't know. But it is incumbent on us as citizens of this city to be informed about what is being mandated by people outside of this city. I'm not coming down on you, hon. I'm just saying, I hear this time and time again, and I don't know what the answer is.
Any other comments or questions? Emerson, thanks very much. And
Thank you.
we do appreciate, and I hope that you're at the beginning of a lifetime of engaging in a public discourse. It would make it better for all of us.
All right, thank you, guys.
Yeah, I wanted to say thanks for getting up and speaking. That takes a lot of courage, especially it's good to see youth getting involved.
But I think as far as organizing his testimony, since he says it doesn't meet the criteria, we'll put him in the opposition category.
Absolutely.
Rather than neither for nor against.
Yes.
Okay.
I got one more comment to add, if you don't mind. So within the criteria that were delivered to read through prior to these hearings, there's more than just, I can't say more than just. It's our job to interpret the code, make sure the city is doing their diligence and providing as much feedback as possible, exhausting every option possible before they present it to us. So we can come to this with a clear mind and be able to give the best feedback possible. So with that, I just wanted to read something here from if it's okay, Mr. Boone, from.
Well, I guess.
Is this deliberation?
Right, yeah, that's the question here. If you have a question for the person testifying, fine. Otherwise, maybe it's more appropriate in
We have an opportunity in
deliberation.
our deliberation.
Okay, then I will
Perhaps
just.
you
We're
can
almost there.
Absolutely, okay,
Thank
yeah,
you.
Reference Mr. Vaughan in that. Okay,
absolutely.
good.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, are there any more comments from the audience? No one else had signed up that I have seen.
I want to ask the administrative staff, nobody online?
Correct.
Okay, none? Proceed to the applicant rebuttal.
The applicant, do you have any rebuttal? Oh, Eric?
Yeah, one question. I understand there's no HOA, is that correct?
I'm going to ask staff, they're shaking their heads, there is no HOA, yes.
Well, yeah, that was not a question. I mean, that was not testimony. Well, you're not, you've waived, I mean, you've said you completed your testimony, so we don't just have pop-up questions. Okay.
All right, rebuttal from the developer, the applicant?
I don't have anything directly unless anyone has questions.
Well, we may have some questions, but.
Okay. Why don't you come forward to the table in case the commission has questions?
Still on?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Would you consider lowering the density?
So as the designer, I'm not directly able to. The builder in all of our discussions said that this is what was necessary. We did look at lower density options before they purchased the property, and the answer was no, we got to have this many to
Can you
make it work.
speak louder, please?
Sorry, let me backtrack my brain. When we first spoke with the builder, and as we were going through this, before they purchased the dirt, we did go through lower density options, and their response to us was that with 7 units or 6 units, it just didn't pencil to a profitable product based on the market today.
Since you did pencil things out, what is the price point you anticipated these?
That's not relevant to the
I know it
applicable
isn't,
tree removal
but it-
criteria, so I want to make sure that the DRC focuses on that. Thank you.
Yeah, the
I
answer to the
feel
question.
it is. Because if it doesn't pencil out at 6 or 7,
Well, I think that this commission has previously held, I mean, the text is they're permitted to develop what's permitted in the zone,
I understand
which is 5 to
that.
8.
I know.
So they can
But
go to 8.
what we're hearing from everybody around is it would be more palatable if it were less dense. And I'm just trying to
Right,
figure
you're
it out.
asking the developer if he would build less than he's permitted to by the zone,
Yeah.
which is not really within the scope of reasonable alternatives. So I'm not saying you can't ask the question, but I'm saying he doesn't have to answer as to, because I think that's outside the scope of reasonable alternative on our definition there. But if you want to answer, I mean, you did say you've considered alternative density.
Right.
So
If
go
it
right
helps,
ahead.
I don't have that number.
Yeah.
Any other questions of the applicant? By the way, I do appreciate that we're sticking to the code and the rules, and I know how frustrating sometimes that is, but it is our responsibility to do it this way. Okay, thank you very much. Attorney Boone.
Let me just check one. Yeah. Since the applicant has completed their rebuttal, you may proceed with deliberation. There's no additional information to be received.
You ready to deliberate? Who would like to speak first besides John?
I'll go ahead. I certainly understand and hear the passion of a number of you, or all of you here tonight. And again, the passion, and I think that speaks well of our city and the fact that all of us look to do for Lake Oswego to be the best that it can be. Unfortunately, there, as has been stated by a number of the commissioners here, we're under certain rules and regulations. And I just want to read one part of the staff report again. A tree removal permit must be approved or denied based on findings as to whether the criteria in LOC 55-02.080 are met. And criterion that does not fall under that includes natural resources and habitat, wildlife, food sources, soil health, air quality, noise reduction, density, parking, traffic. And that's just not part, although I understand that those are huge issues and they do have an impact on what visually and aesthetically we all have to live with, but they're not part of what we can consider. I think what Associate Planner Sims has laid out here and has prepared a very detailed and clearly stated explanation of the criterion and the exception analysis related to the type 2 tree removal. And given that, I am going to have to vote in favor of the tree removal.
Yeah. By the way, we have 2 applications and we will vote on those separately. So if you're comfortable to continue this general discussion, I will split it before we finish. Thank you, John. Any other comments?
Yes, I have some comments. I have lived in Lake Oswego over 40 years, so I'm very much vested and compassionate with all of you who have spoke. The trees in my neighborhood are ones that make the neighborhood what it is visually, and as you pass through, either walking or driving, makes a big difference. So I'm in alignment with many of the things that you've said, same way that I live. I'm not really in alignment with density. That seems to be the thing that's driving the issues here. The density of what's being put on this lot is forcing the trees out as part of the development. So profitability of the developer, I understand that criteria, but I don't understand, and I don't hear anybody speak of it, is how many houses or cottages are designed for a particular size lot? Like if the lot was twice as big as this, I could see where that might be allowed. Maybe this lot should only be 5 units. I don't know. Is there criteria for how many square feet you need?
I think you need to ask, this is deliberation among ourselves, and you should ask staff.
No, I'm
that
just talking.
We can also answer that question if you'd
Yeah.
like. So with the minimum lot size for the R6 zone,
I believe it's 7,000 square feet for cottage cluster development. I can pull that up specifically
Of
as far
how
as
many?
minimum lot size.
Of how many units?
so a cottage cluster is 5 to 8 units minimum.
Right, I
In
understand
order
the 5
In
to
order
8.
to get even 5, but up to 8, you have to have in the R6 zone a minimum of 7,000 square feet. So this lot exceeds that minimum lot square footage, so they get anywhere between 5 and 8 units.
And if Kat wants to pull up my presentation, I can go through the dimensional standards as far as what has to fit on there. It is up to the developer to make it fit, and if they can make 8 units fit that meet all of the criteria, then they meet the criteria at that point. So, sorry, Kat, didn't mean to put you on the fly there. Is it not moving forward?
Pat, can you move that? Thank you.
Yeah, so if you make that full screen. Anyways, so as far as dimensional standards, each cottage must be 10-foot setback from every property line, and they have to have 10 feet of separation between each cottage. They're also required to have a minimum of 150 square feet per cottage for the courtyard, and at least 15 feet at the narrowest point for the courtyard widths. So the courtyard can't be less than 15 feet wide. 50% of the cottages must be oriented towards the courtyard. They're required to have 4-foot wide pathways from each of the cottages to the courtyard as well as to the street. The building design standards for the R6 zone require porches, thank you, that are oriented towards the front, which is 3rd Street in this instance, and then they also have to meet all of the utility standards. So the builder is given a order of these are the rules that will apply for that site, and it is up to them if they can fit them on the site, then they are meeting the criteria for the building permit. And that's just the planning criteria. There are other standards and there are other planning criteria, but these are, and a reasonable alternative would also have to meet those criteria if they're going to fit all of those cottages on the site.
So why would any developer select less density?
They don't have to.
So why do we have a 5 to 8?
If they can't fit that many on the site and still meet all the criteria, they may have to choose, but that is up to them and their designers to meet those criteria. If their designers can't make those criteria work, then they might have to go down to 5, 6, or 7 units or choose a different allowed middle housing. And that's what we are reviewing in the building permit process.
Correct.
Thanks, Kat.
So we have the developer's desires versus the long-term neighbor's desires. Developer doesn't live here or may not live here.
Yeah, but as I think Commissioner Dews pointed out, density is not one of the criteria that are applicable to tree permits.
No, but the tree removal is driven by the density.
Yeah.
Yes. But this is the new normal. I think this is a wake-up call, a clarion call to the city of Lake Oswego that something is awry and we are the victims of it.
Yeah, I think we're hearing a sentiment of commissioners, and I'm also hearing us all say to each other, we have to apply the code as it is written.
I would like to make a comment regarding, trying to mitigate keeping the older trees and hoping that they survive. That's really my building background. Very seldom does that happen, but planting larger trees in the mitigation plan, what we have learned on the council is smaller trees have a much more successful chance of viability growing, as getting established and growing, as opposed to having big trees today come in with a backhoe and dropping in a 30-foot tree. It's real tough to get those to go. So that's why the city mandates the 1.5-inch caliber tree. And again, I will tell you, those Persian ironwoods will double in size in 5 years. If they plant an 8-foot tree, it'll be 16 in 5 years, and it'll be 30 in another 5 years. Will they be huge canopies? No, they're a columnar tree. But they have a beautiful fall color, and they're very, very nice tree. That's all I can.
I might also comment about the appropriate comment about new tree maintenance, and the discussions that I'm hearing about the new Lake Oswego urban forest plan and tree code is that that's one of the major elements that's going to be part of our criterion moving forward, is maintenance of new plantings.
And the developer or whoever owns these units will be responsible for keeping these trees healthy for the first 3 years. And that's something that the city doesn't enforce a whole lot, and I would like to see better compliance with that.
Just to clarify that statement, because this is not sensitive lands, we do not have a 3-year maintenance and monitoring requirement. These are type 2 mitigation trees. Sensitive lands does come with a 3-year maintenance and monitoring.
All I know is when we put them in on our open space, we were told we were to maintain them and make them viable for 3 years.
That may be that open space had sensitive
It was not
lands in it.
dedicated, it's private property. It's HOA property.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm unaware of what your situation was, but the type 2 tree code does not come with a 3-year mitigation, maintenance, and monitoring requirement. I just want to make sure that that's understood.
Okay, any other comments? Any other discussion? Well, I'd like at this point to clearly separate these two. And with respect to AP 2404, I would like to formally move that we concur with the recommendations and the analysis of staff and approve this. I am making a motion. She seconded. You call the roll, please.
Sangre,
Aye.
O'Connor,
Nay.
Dews,
Aye.
Bates,
Aye.
Leek,
Aye.
Lino,
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Nay.
Five yes and 2 no.
5 yes, 2 no. Everybody agree? Now for the second AP 24-05, I'd like to just once more make sure that there are no questions specifically about the requirements for the alleyway, the single large tree. Any additional comments on that?
Yes. I have seen in many locations in the city where there has been consideration given in pathways or sidewalks, maybe even trees. I don't know why this alley would have a higher requirement than a street or a sidewalk. So I would think that there would be some ability to give some consideration to this tree. It is the tallest tree on the lot. It is obviously significant in its location because it's on a corner. I'd like to see something done there.
Yeah, given that the responsibility for requesting a variance on the city standards is exclusively in the hands of the developer, how does that happen?
He has to do it. He has to go in for a variance. How long would that take and what does that cost? I know it's not germane to the discussion.
Well,
It is.
outright, the question is whether or not the developer could do what's permitted in the zone. And so there, as we previously ruled last 5X years, that means that the commission cannot condition or deny based upon the requirement that the applicant seek a discretionary variance to city standards. Okay, so and put this in larger context. I mean, the housing standard requires clear and objective standards. Okay, so if they are ministerial, they meet the standards.
But if he wanted to be a good neighbor in this one instance, how long would a variance take and what would it cost him?
Typically, minor variances are minor development applications, land use applications. They start with a pre-app, which is about $500. The applicant then has a year to put an application together. Once submitted, and the cost for this type of application, we've never actually done one. I'm assuming it's just a minor variance. A different fee code, which I'm not familiar with. I'm probably a couple of thousand. But please don't hold me to that number. But typically, minor development applications to get complete and then have a decision issued anywhere from 3 to 5, sometimes longer, months.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Does someone else want to make the motion? Hearing no one, I'll make a motion that we concur with the recommendations in the report of staff on AP 24-05.
I would second that motion.
Roll call.
Sangre,
Aye.
O'Connor,
Nay.
Hughes,
Aye.
Bates,
Aye.
Leek,
No.
Mano,
Nay.
What did you say?
Lindstrom,
Nay.
three to four.
3 affirmative or in support and 4 opposed. So it fails. Everybody agree with that?
That's what we voted.
Well, we'll need a motion that carries a majority of the commission. So the failure of that motion doesn't dispose of that application.
Right. Everybody ready? Okay. Well, we will be meeting to.
Well, let me be clear. There needs to be a motion to either approve with additional conditions or a motion to deny. And that motion.
So you need a motion from us to deny.
Right. I mean,
Sorry.
that motion to approve did not pass. Right? So that means nothing's been decided. Right?
Would someone like to make a motion to deny?
Yes, I will. For AP 2405, which is TR 499-24-001-884. This was for an 18-inch western hemlock. The motion is that we have voted and have had 3 yes and 4 nay. So that did not pass. The motion would be that we would ask that the city and the developer discuss, figure out a means of saving that tree. Maybe there's some variance with the city, maybe there's some variance with the developer, but let's get it done.
So to clarify, the motion is to deny? AP 24-05.
Yeah.
That's what we
Someone could
voted.
restate
May
that.
may I simplify your comments to a motion to deny with a recommendation that staff and applicant re-engage and pursue an alternative that would save this tree? Is that all right with you?
Yeah, that's nice.
I second.
Sangri,
I'm going to vote no.
O'Connor,
Yes.
Dews,
No.
Bates,
No.
Leek,
Yes.
Mino,
Yes.
Lindstrom,
Yes.
I hear 4-3 in favor, and Mr. Attorney, that's a majority.
Right, yes, that motion carries to deny. This is a tentative decision by the commission, and written findings will be brought back to the commission at the next meeting on,
So that would be January 6th, and because it is only findings, you can deliberate on whether or not you want to meet in person or over Zoom. I do know that there is a conflict with this room on January 6th. There's someone else wanting to use this, so I'm just putting that out there.
Can I simplify that? Can we all make a Zoom meeting at 6 o'clock on January 6th to deal with this? And staff, you can bring a report to the holiday, won't disrupt you?
We will have findings ready in time. Those will be ready the Friday before, which would be the 3rd.
So that'll be at 6 p.m.?
Yes, 6 p.m. on January 6th on Zoom, and we'll get that meeting invite out to you.
Monday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else to come before the group this evening?
We do have a management update, if there's nothing else.
Management update.
Okey-doke. So we figured out for findings for both AP 2404 and AP 2405 will be on Zoom, 6 p.m. on January 6th. I wanted to remind the commissioners, you should have received, I think, multiple invites at this point from the city manager's office for the Boards and Commissions Summit, and that is on January 9th. Very much hope whoever was attended last year can attend this year, definitely for our new commissioners. It's a good opportunity to meet your fellow commissioners and board members and to interact around council goals and community ideas. There is also an annual survey that the city manager's office sent out. I think that you have all responded, but I just wanted to make sure that you have. Is there anyone that hasn't that needs to have that email resent to you? No? Okay.
All right.
Oh, sorry. For the commission, or for the summit on the 9th, I think there is an RSVP that needs to be sent in to the city manager's office. I think, again, Quinn, with that office, has sent out at least 3 emails. So hopefully you all have responded, and hopefully, like I said, you can all attend. I did want to give a quick update for a project that happened quite a while ago, and it was finally resolved. And that's the New Look development, that's LU 23-0002. It was for multiple lot line adjustments and development of a public sewer from Waluga Park out to Invery. I think it's in Invery, right?
Inverness.
So that did go to the court. There were 2 decisions. The first decision was that the city charter, Chapter 10, is an applicable development regulation. The second finding from the judge, which happened, I think, 7 months later, he's not commenting, was that the proposal did comply with the charter. So you probably saw newspaper articles about that. Really, when we do, and I know that there was some question about why there wasn't an earlier update, I did send out an email, and the project webpage did have the judge's findings or reports, or I'm not quite sure what you call them. They did have them posted. Typically, what we do with an update is we let you know if there was an appeal to council, if they modified your decision or reversed it or added on conditions of approval, so you know how that played out in in front of a different hearing body. But then also for courtesy as well, since this was a pretty controversial project, we did want to make sure that that information got back to you just out of curiosity, and so you could see how that played out in that writ of mandamus process. But if you have any questions about it, I can send you the link to the project webpage. There's a lot of good information there. Yes, and thank you very much, Commissioner Leek. The applicant has submitted public improvement plans for the sewer line. I don't believe that they've submitted any of the lot line adjustment plats. So I think they're focusing right now on public improvements. So getting the line and all of that construction, the sewer line construction ready for actual construction or installation.
Do you expect that this will come back to us?
No,
Oh,
it
I
is
don't think
fully
so.
outside of our normal
Right.
DRC and city council process. Not going to LUBA or anything. It is, the writ of mandamus is a separate court process, so it's resolved. And there was no appeal of that finding, or of that resolution. I also did want to note that the Community Development Director, Jessica Manalou, will be working on the tree code update. I think that was raised earlier. They're working to find a consultant for that, and then there'll be a whole public engagement process. What that looks like, what that timeline looks like, we're not quite sure yet, but it is moving forward, and it's something that the council asked us to do for this upcoming year, the 2025. So hopefully we'll start seeing stuff like that, stuff about that on the city's webpage. And pay attention. We would love to have you involved as much as you can be. Any questions for me? Anything else? Oh, sorry, thank you. That's a very good question. No, there is nothing on the schedule that is I don't believe we have any DRC even decisions coming up. And I don't know of any staff level decisions, administrative decisions that would be appealed to you. So hopefully after the summit, you'll have some time to enjoy a little time away from the DRC. Thank you tonight for your hard work.
Thank you.
Yeah, before adjourning, I would like to restate Manager Hank's comment about this meeting with the rest of the leadership of Lake Oswego. That's really worthwhile. It's really fun. Yeah, yeah, and they serve cookies. All right, hearing nothing more, we will adjourn the meeting. Yep.